Okay, so the first question is, can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Douglas Cotto. I'm 83 years old, born in 1941.
My name is June Awuchi Burke, and I'm 91 years old, and I was born in 1932.
My name is Bill Watanabe. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, retired social worker at the Little Tokyo Service Center.
My name is Mike Marase, and I used to work at the Little Tokyo Service Center until a couple years ago.
What is your ethnicity?
Of Japanese heritage, I'm Nisei, second generation.
I'm Japanese American.
I'm Japanese American.
I'm Japanese American.
What is one holiday or celebration that your family has?
We like to have ozoni every New Year's.
I'm not big on traditions, but I guess I would say Oshogatsu, and enjoying the food and getting together with family and friends.
Have you seen or experienced any form of racial hate?
Yes, when I was a young kid, all the way through until I was in middle school.
And can you describe or explain some of that?
When my cousin and I were walking down in San Francisco, in Chinatown, somebody called us out and said, monkeys, called us different things and said, do we have a passport?
Mm-hmm.
And I took my cousin, I said, hey, let's get away from here because it's ridiculous.
There have been a number of incidents, but I would say the one that I remember the most was when I was 9 or 10, and our family was newly immigrated from Japan. And my parents, they struggle with English, so when we went to a store one time, the clerk talked to them, and my parents didn't understand right away, and so the clerk started talking to them very slowly and loudly.
Yeah.
I didn't like the feeling that
Yeah.
I thought my parents are stupid or something, so.
Before the war, there was a lot of anti-Japanese in the newspapers, but personally, I never have.
One time I was taking a trip through Nebraska with a Caucasian friend. And so after dinner, I said, why don't we go into town and see a movie? And she said, no, that's not a good idea. I said, well, why? What's wrong? She said, they don't like people of color in town after dark.
Mm-hmm.
They'll beat you up.
Have you ever kind of felt like an outsider ever in your life?
Yeah, I felt like an outsider a lot. Generationally, age-wise, I'm in the generation of Sansei, but because of my experience coming to this country as a child, I think I didn't get treated the same way as other Sansei did. Sansei were taught by their Nisei parents, not warnings, but messages from people saying you should not be so Japanesey. You should not congregate with other Japanese or, speak Japanese or things like that. So I think the first time I felt like an outsider was when I didn't feel accepted by other Sansei.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like an outsider most of my life. Growing up in the San Fernando Valley, there weren't that many Asians there. I did go to a Japanese American church, and I went to Japanese school. So there I felt comfortable, but outside of that, like going to school every day, or whenever I'm in a group or a setting where there aren't many Asians, I always felt a sense of being an outsider.
What was your experience with Japanese internment?
I was in Santa Anita first. They put us in horse stalls, and then put 5 months there. And then we were sent to Rower, Arkansas. And there was about, I think, 9,000 to 10,000 people in our camp.
So I was a baby. I don't remember personally the camps at all. But I did hear stories from my older brothers and my parents, my aunts and uncles. They would occasionally tell stories. And as I got older, I would ask them questions, actually interview them and ask them what they experienced. They went through a lot having to go to camp. And then I had a brother who died at Manzanar. And so I often wonder what would have happened if he had not died.
My sister was ready to graduate from high school, so she was very upset. She said, I took a class in civil rights, and I know they can't do this to us. So she said, I'm not going to camp. But my mother said, if you don't go to camp, who's going to take care of us? And who's going to take care of you when you're by yourself outside? I mean, it affected 120,000 Japanese Americans by that one signing of President's signature.
My mother and father, they always helped me out and kept me away from the knowledge of the real camps because I was young. But it must have been hard for them. They were like late 20s. So they kept most of the bad things away from me. But as I grew up, I learned about these things.
My parents were flower growers in the San Fernando Valley before the war. And they had a very kind landlord who basically assured my parents that, in fact, he said, go to the camps. The war's not going to last forever. And when the war's over, come back and you can pick up where you left off. So I would say my family was very lucky because I know there are other families who lost everything during the war.
Why do you think it's important to remember Japanese internment?
Well, that's part of our history. The Issei's, they struggled all their lives when they came here. They endured a lot of hardship and they endured a lot of prejudice. They worked very hard, all for the sake of the children. And they always say kodomo no tameni, and that means for the sake of the children. They would endure and they would work hard.
Like my mother and father said, my grandfather, always remember your heritage. Never repeat the bad things, but always remember.
How have you and your family been impacted from the camps today?
I think it's a clear example that when times become contentious, people become anxious and fearful, and they make stupid decisions, and they like to point out scapegoats and put the blame on other people. And so the camps are an example that this is what could happen. It happened before, it could happen again.
And the last question is, I guess for the future generation, if they're experiencing any form of hate or racial hate in particular, how do you think they could deal with that?
Yeah, on the individual level, I think people have to make decisions about how much you want to confront it directly, or you back off and you walk away or whatever. But I think the real solution is again coming together as groups of people, and because what you want to do is you want to address people's hate and negative attitudes individually, but in the end, you want to be able to address it as a society.